Do you think that you're a lucky person, or do you think that you're unlucky? Or do you think that luck doesn't matter at all? Do you think that there are things in life that it's not all about how much effort you put in, but there's other things outside of your control that influence your chances of success? I'm currently reading, among many other books that I'm reading at the same time, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And in chapter 2, he talks about luck and risk, and he tells the story about Bill Gates. And so there's this line in there that really hit me. It says, most university graduate schools did not have a computer anywhere near as advanced as Bill Gates had access to in 8th grade. End quote. So basically, when Bill Gates was in high school, the high school that he went to, they got them this very new, upscale for that time computer. This was in 1965, I believe. And it wasn't like a strict part of the curriculum that people had to use it. But Bill Gates and Paul Allen were very curious about it and got really into it. And they had a third friend, Kent Evans, who was also really into it. But then Kent Evans died in a wild mountaineering accident. And there's another quote from the book that really hits me. Quote, 1 in a million high school age students attended the high school that had the combination of cash and foresight to buy a computer, and Bill Gates happened to be in one of them. So he goes further. That's the end of that quote. So in the book, Morgan Housel goes further to talk about how in 1968 there were roughly 303 million high school age people in the world, according to the United Nations. About 18 million of those people lived in the US, about 270,000 of them lived in Washington State, and only 300 of them attended Lakeside School, which is the high school that Bill Gates went to. Now, that is literally a 1 in a million chance, right? So the interesting part for me is not even just that Bill Gates literally was 1 in a million in the high school that he went to, is that there were many other kids who went to that school that didn't become Bill Gates, that didn't go on to invent or create Microsoft or whatever it has become now. For example, Bill Gates' friend, Kent Evans, he was also part of those 300 kids who had access to a computer in high school compared to the over 300 million estimated other high school age people in the world at that same time. But he died in a mountaineering accident before he could finish high school. And also, the chances of dying in a mountain, on a mountain in high school is about 1 in a million as well. So 1 in a million odds to be in the school where there is a computer, a very high-end computer for that time, and then also 1 in a million odds to be killed in a mountaineering accident in high school. That is mind-blowing to me because in this particular example, both Bill Gates and his friend, Kent Evans, were both interested in computers. They had access to the same computer and they were both interested, both playing around with it, both toying around with it, in addition to Paul Allen, who was the third friend. But Bill Gates went on to do all these amazing things while his other friend just died before he even finished high school, before he could even do other things. And the only reason that we know his name, I've never heard his name before until I read this book or until I started reading this book. And the only reason we know this is because Bill Gates talks about that his friend when he talks about his journey and his story. And that's just one side of the different quote unquote, right? Like things, again, another thing outside of your control, which is like nobody plans to die in high school necessarily, but you see that happened in this instance. And that is the thing about luck. it is literally things. Sometimes, like, you can make your own luck, right? But sometimes you can't. Like, nobody tries to die. Like, do you get what I mean? Like, it's so interesting. And I said like a lot. So, back to my earlier point about there were 300 kids in this school. We know the names of three who went on to do things relating to computing and computers, although one died earlier. And that means there were 297 other kids in this school who didn't become Bill Gates. And that is where it gets interesting for me because what makes the difference? Now, this doesn't mean that everyone will have an interest in computers or should have an interest in computers, at least at that time. They even said that, like, Bill Gates had this, and his friends, they had this, like, beyond their years interest and curiosity and capacity with computers. Maybe there were other people who could have done that, but maybe they just weren't curious enough to try it out, because I've talked about previously about how some things you can learn, but you don't know until you try them. Like, if you're interested in them, or if it's something that you can be good at if you don't even attempt in the first place. So maybe how we can also build our luck, because for the people who didn't have access to a computer at that level that Bill Gates had access to, they probably could not have done the same things or even thought about the same things or conceptualized the same things that like he did. But maybe for the rest of us, what we can do is we can try to create more luck for ourselves where we can by trying out more things, by being curious about other things, by exploring things, by going beyond things that we have an innate affinity, quote unquote, for, and exploring things outside of those things that we've always been told we're so good at and we're naturally excellent at. Because if we only stick to those things, sometimes we may miss out on other possibilities and potential things that we can do. I know that in my own journey, I've experienced a lot of luck. When people ask me about how I got into UX, I don't even have any big story to tell because it literally just happened. I wasn't searching it out. I was just in the right place at the right time by chance. And that led to an opportunity that the things that I had done before kind of prepared me for. And that is something that I'm thinking about how to do more consciously now, like how to create more opportunities for lucky things to happen to me. And I talked about it a bit in one of the episodes on friendship about increasing your luck surface area, like in relationship terms, like when you want to make a new friend or make new friends, putting in extra effort to do more, to put yourself out there literally, and take more shots with people to make more friends. Because the wider your surface area, the higher your chances of finding good new friends. And if you apply that to other things, you see how you can quote unquote increase your luck. But then I also think that areas where maybe that may not be 100% applicable, because you could say that, oh, to increase your luck in terms of lifespan, maybe don't do dangerous sports, right? But there's also something to be said for doing those kinds of quote unquote extreme sports for people who enjoy that, the thrill, the excitement, the doing something difficult and new experience is also there. So it's like a thin line and it's really hard to define. And I guess the definition of what is too much is it depends on like the person who is the center of the thing at the time. And I guess this is another case of where truisms are truisms because they are true. It's that thing about opportunity meets preparation. If the things I think about, like how I got into UX in the first place, the preparation was I had been lucky enough to get into University of Lagos to study psychology. And I was lucky that I was next to a tech hub, and I was lucky that I had a friend who was involved in that tech hub and introduced me to that tech hub. And I was lucky to go to a meetup to meet someone who told me about the UX team there, and I was lucky to find out about that. But the other part was I became involved. I was present, I was active, I spoke to people, I connected with the community, I helped out in the community. And when there was an opportunity they wanted to hire a UX researcher, my quote unquote preparation that I didn't even know I was preparing for anything the opportunity met me prepared, basically. So yeah. Bye. And from a Christian perspective, there's the point of my life is literally being orchestrated by God. And even if I may go off course sometimes, and I feel like this is going to be a whole episode on its own, how I think about how God orders my life, even if I make missteps sometimes. We'll talk about that maybe tomorrow. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of A Couple of Things. If you enjoyed this episode or found any part of it insightful, don't forget to share with your friends on your social media, and be sure to leave a comment or a review if you can on your podcast listening app. Thank you.